So once again, we'll start down with Jill. Jill, this question is for you. How did you decide on your career path?
The reason I decided on nursing was because my mom was a nurse, and I just highly respected what she did. Also, we have a lot of medical people, profession in our family, also police officers, and I really wanted to be a nurse. So when I went to JCC, Jackson Community College, this is a long time ago, and they told me no, I was really disappointed. But when I went to Lansing Community College, they said, come on, like I said earlier, come on, you can do it, let's give it a try. So I graduated from the LPN program, and I had two choices, labor and delivery part-time or oncology full-time. At that time, that's the only two positions that were open. So, and of course, I needed a full-time job to pay the school loan. So I took oncology, and I just fell in love with it. Just absolutely fell in love with it. One of the things that my parents always told me when I was growing up is we had to visit my grandpa in a nursing home, and I would disappear, and I'd go in and visit other people. But now what I do is more one-on-one. I volunteer for camp, and I may do a one-on-one situation. I did drive at one time. That license was taken away, but you'll never take my nursing license away. Never.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Joe. The next question is for Karen. Karen, how did you decide on your career path?
This is Karen speaking. I've always enjoyed working with people, and I decided that I wanted to become a teacher. I think I was 10 years old when I made that decision. And my mom used to be a teacher, so I decided to follow in her footsteps. But people told me that I couldn't be a teacher. They said, Karen, you can't. You're handicapped. Well, I was very stubborn, and I decided to go ahead and study to become a teacher anyway. And I decided to work with students who had what people called handicaps. And that was fine. I became a special education teacher with focus on deaf students. But you have to understand, I'm not from America, I'm from Europe. And in Europe, I was looking for a school who was willing to hire me and willing to give me a chance, and they did. They hired me, and I taught at that school. I taught preschool and kindergarten and middle school, and I really enjoyed that work. Later, when I was looking for a job again, I couldn't find a job here. I couldn't find a job here in America where they were willing to hire me. I decided that that was fine, and that I would find children with disabilities, and I would try to help their parents. And I would help their parents improve the lives of these children, and also help the family. I would help the family understand how to improve their relationship with their children. So I became an early interventionist, and I was working with parents, and these parents had recently found out that their children had some type of disability, which might have included the child being deaf. I would go into their homes with a nurse, and we would have a discussion to plan about teaching these children about the important things. And I was also teaching the parents what it was they needed to do with their child. And the nurse was focusing on the medical needs, while I was focusing on more of the educational and, in some aspects, the family needs. And then I started working in mental health. And I was working with deaf people as well as deaf-blind people. as well as deaf people who had additional disabilities. Perhaps it would be cerebral palsy or some type of cognitive impairment, a variety of different disabilities along with deafness. And I really enjoyed that. And really, some of my favorite people were people with severe mental health issues. I loved that job. And I became a crisis intervener. So if a client had some type of crisis in their life, I would arrive and try to help. You know, I would try to negotiate whatever situation they were experiencing, and we would develop a plan for that specific client. I decided to go back to school, to graduate school, and I got my first MA degree, and that was in counseling. So time went on, and I worked as a therapist, and I worked as a clinical director for one clinic, and then I decided to go back to school again. I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but I did. And then I decided to focus specifically on psychology. I decided to go to Gallaudet University at that point, and I realized that picking Gallaudet was because of their full communication access. So I chose clinical psychology and the program that they have at Gallaudet University because I really enjoy research and doing assessments, psychological assessments, as well as neurological assessments. So that became my goal. And I'm still interested in that kind of work. And I'm still trying here in Michigan to set up some type of a job, but I am doing traveling consultant work also. So I guess that's it.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Karen. The next question is for Louis. Louis, I know you shared a little bit about your career with us, but can you tell us how you decided on your career path?
Sure, this is Louis. After I graduated from MSSD, I had several decisions to make. I could have gone to Gallaudet or National Technical Institute for the Deaf, and I decided to put both of those on hold. I was really homesick. I felt like I wanted to go home to Grand Rapids, and so I decided to see what Grand Rapids Community College had to offer and which curriculum would be best for me. And I was very young, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I decided to take some basic courses, English, math, etc., before I actually chose a major. So I took these classes, and I realized that I really didn't have an interest in any of these. I hated English, I hated math, but I was doing well in math and English both, but I just wasn't interested in either of those. So I had a tough decision to make. I wanted something to do with factories or machines. So I decided to take a class in tool and CNC, and I got an apprenticeship. And I decided to see how that would go, and things went along, and I really liked it. So I decided that I would like to have that be my major. I wasn't sure if it would be engineering or what it was, but I wanted to finish the apprenticeship and see what would happen after that. So I graduated from the apprenticeship and received my certification, and I decided that wasn't good enough for me. And people told me that I really needed a degree instead of having just this certification. And I knew that I would get an entry-level job if I had just this certificate. But I really needed to work at that time. I had a lot of bills to pay off, so I decided to work for UPS. And I worked for them for a short time and decided that I didn't really like that because I needed to have benefits. So, and again, it was a temporary job, so I didn't have benefits there. And that's when I joined the JCI that I told you about before. And I worked there for a long time. And I decided that I really didn't need college any longer and that I would just focus on the job that I had. And I had skills for work. And of course, we talked about me being the quality inspector, and that didn't work real well. But I guess the rest was just history. And I told you that I got laid off from that job. And because of the Usher syndrome, I couldn't see it at night, and I couldn't see at great distances, and I overlooked details, and I had to change my career. And I knew it was time for a change, that I couldn't work in the factory any longer. So I went into the program that we talked about that focused on the food service industry, and they had two different types of businesses for this program. They had the restaurant business, like a snack bar, or I could have chosen a cafeteria. Those were the two choices. And the other one was a vending machine route, or an actual vending facility. So the vending business focused on beverages and snacks and that type of thing in general. And you had to restock machines, the vending machines, when they were empty, and you had to, open them and stock them and close them again and take care of the money. So I decided that I would try vending. I thought that the cafeteria seemed like a lot of preparation work and ordering more, and it seemed a lot busier than the vending machine arena did. So I bid on a vending machine location, and there were a lot of people that were bidding, and the only thing that was left for me to get was the snack bar. So I decided to bid on that, and I did get the snack bar business, and it was in downtown Lansing. And again, it really wasn't anything I was interested in. I was not interested in food service. It might have been a perfect match for someone else, but it was not what I was looking for. Again, I was much more interested in manual labor. I had never even worked at McDonald's. I had no idea what the food service industry would be like. And so I stepped down from that position, and I'm still looking for a new job. But next week on Tuesday, I do have an interview at the Meyer Distribution Center, and that might be more of something like a factory job, but there's no quality inspection there, so we're waiting to see what happens with that.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Louis. Good luck next Tuesday. The next question is for Izzy. Izzy, how did you decide on your career path?
This is Izzy speaking. My favorite teacher was my second grade teacher. She was so sweet and very helpful, and she helped all of the deafblind students in the classroom, and she was such a nice person. And sometimes it was very easy for me to understand, but other students struggled with understanding the teacher. So the teacher asked me if I could help the other students, and I was happy to do that, and so I would help the other students in the classroom. And I realized that I could explain things very clearly for these students. And that was when I thought that maybe I could become a teacher. And my teacher told me that I was very patient, and that I was very nice, and that I was really helping other people, and that I might become a teacher in the future. So that was something that I thought about and kept in the back of my mind for quite some time. And when I graduated from high school, I noticed that people always struggled with their studies. And I noted these people right away, and I could help them, and I could explain things very clearly to them. So I decided that I needed to become a teacher. But when I was attending school, they didn't really have a program for deafblind teachers. So I had to take a variety of different classes from different departments. Again, the social work department, the psychology department, the audiology department, the blind rehab department. So I took all of these different classes and got all of these different degrees and became an instructor with the specialty of teaching deafblind students to become a certified teacher. And I absolutely loved working with people one-on-one. That matched my personality. I can do workshops or be on panels like I am here today, but I really prefer the one-on-one work to help people more directly and to clarify things and help people improve whatever it is they're working on. And that just seems to match my personal style, and I have enjoyed that work for a long time.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Izzy. The next question is for Andrea. Andrea, how have you decided on a career path? I know you shared that you're heading to Baker College, and how did you decide on the career path that you're choosing?
Okay, I have always been interested in computer and technology, and I love helping people, so I decided going into computer information system as well as being tech support person to help people with their computer problems, and I enjoy doing that. And I know I'm going to enjoy doing that because I love helping people know and explaining how the computer works and explain how to use the program, and who knows where else might lead. Because I'm always been a techy person. Thank you.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Andrea. And we'll go to our next question, so we'll pass that down to Jill. Jill, can you tell us how you've gained support or inspiration from connecting with others who are deaf-blind, either now or in the past?
This is Jill speaking. I had mentioned before that there was a deaf-blind camp in 1997, and at that time, I didn't know any sign language. But like I said, at the end of that workshop, I stood up and said that I wanted to help set up a deaf-blind organization. What inspired me to do that was, like I said, Jeff Borman, totally deaf, totally blind. And then there was also a woman, her name was Jenny Berlin, totally deaf, totally blind. And I just kept watching them and kind of watching the interpreters. And the more I saw, I thought, wow, if they've accomplished what they have in their lives, I can do the same thing. Also, when I met and married my husband, who's in the back of the room, he knew about the hearing loss, but we had no idea about the vision. And we just celebrated 30 years. So he has inspired me by the support and helping me remain independent. And I have become good friends. Izzy, she was one of the first deaf-blind that was very patient with me because I didn't know sign language. We became good friends. We call each other sisters. And Andrea, she's now on the board. And we chat on the computer. And Karen and I get together and we do workshops together. When I'm with another deaf-blind person, I feel almost complete because they understand exactly what I'm going through. So that's what inspires me.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Jill. The next question is for Karen. Karen, how have you gained support or inspiration from connecting with others who are deaf-blind, either now or in the past?
This is Karen speaking. I'm a really fortunate person because I used to live in Sweden. And Sweden has a wonderful program for deaf people as well as deaf-blind people. So I was able to meet a lot of deaf-blind people, deaf-blind adults, and a lot of children who are deaf-blind. And I noticed that a lot of deaf-blind adults really help in working with children. They can encourage these children and inspire the children. And I was watching these adults and it inspired me. Then I moved to America and I found the deaf-blind people here in America. And I used to live in Seattle, in the Seattle area. And Seattle has many deaf-blind people. Really, it's the largest deaf-blind community in the world. And there are a lot of services there in Seattle. There are a lot of expert interpreters. There are a lot of deaf interpreters. But what inspired me was socialization with other deaf-blind people. I find similarities and I find understanding. And it feels like deaf-blind people are very patient with me, and we're patient with each other. And we're very supportive and encouraging of each other. And we have developed wonderful friendships. When I moved to Michigan, I met some deafblind people here, and then I met Jill. And really, Jill has been a wonderful inspiration to me to become more politically active. Before that, it was more of a socialization idea or professional relationships. But now I feel a little bit more rebellious. I want to try to encourage communities to become more advocates and to become more of an advocate organization. So I went to Gallaudet University, and of course, it's a very political place, as we all know, but it didn't used to be so political in the deafblind arena. And I felt lucky because I was one of the very first people to really stir the pot, to really stand up and encourage people to become more politically active. So I found that through my community. And I've gotten a lot of inspiration from individuals as well as organizations.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Karen. The next question is for Louis. Louis, how have you gained support or inspiration from connecting with others who are deafblind, either now or in the past?
Well, remember I just said that I am a very independent person. And my father advised me, and he supported me. And I really haven't had a whole lot of role models in my life. I've been very independent. But after I accepted the fact that I am truly a deafblind person, I am looking to deafblind children, and just recently, I'm looking to deafblind children who have just recently become deafblind, and I want to encourage them not to feel sorry for themselves or be depressed, and I want to be their role model. You know, they can establish their own business, like I said. I don't necessarily like to sit at the computer, but deafblind people truly need the computer. Everything you need to know is right there in the computer, and I would like to tell deafblind children that we don't have to rely on others for information, that we can remain very independent and use the computer to do that. Everything we need is right there on the computer. And I think that I can help the deafblind community. I'm not exactly sure how to best help them, but I believe that we need to boost each other's confidence and inspire each other. And that's why I'm here today, to encourage people to know that you are very fortunate. The deafblind people that are here, you're very fortunate because you do have computers nowadays, and you can find anything you need right there on the computer. And this is much different than it used to be. We used to have to use the yellow pages and make phone calls. And our phone bills were outrageous because of all the calls we had to make. But now we just pay a small fee for internet connection, and everything you need is right there at your fingertips. So I think that today's kids, as well as adults, are very lucky.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Louis. This is Jennifer again. The next question is for Izzy. Izzy, how have you gained support or inspiration from connecting with others who are deafblind, either now or in the past?
This is Izzy speaking. When I went to school the first time and I learned that I was deafblind, I remember that I had 3 older brothers who were sighted and could hear. My second brother was hard of hearing, but he could speak and he could see. And I am the 4th born in my family, but I did not realize that I was deaf and blind. And when I went to school and found out that I was deaf and blind and saw all these other students just like me, I was really surprised. I found out that I wasn't really like my brothers any longer, that they could hear and that they could see, and so that made them different. And then I realized why I had been struggling. I thought all along that I was really stupid. I thought that my parents and my brothers were really smart and that I was stupid. And then when I went to school and found other students who were just like me and saw how easy it was to communicate with them, I realized that I was smart. So I realized that I was in a different group. It was like a light bulb going off. It was a wonderful discovery. And you remember that I told you that I could not sign with the teacher in the room, but when the teacher left, all of the students started signing to each other to communicate. And we used tactile communication, and it was awesome. And I learned it was very different in our two separate worlds. So I grew up with other deafblind students, and we were a very tight-knit group, and we could communicate very easily. And at home and away from the deafblind world, we really struggled with communication. But during school, it was like a totally different world. We were much more relaxed. There was not an oppression there. We could talk about anything. But then when we got home, all of us struggled, and it was much more difficult to communicate. So when I graduated from high school and I was thinking about going to college, I couldn't decide if I was going into the hearing world or the deafblind world. And it was very stressful to help to train interpreters about college and do all of that. But really, internally, I wanted to be with other deafblind people who were just like me because of the ease of communication. So I needed to search out where it was to find these deafblind people. So I met Jill, and like Jill said, there's a deafblind workshop that we have yearly. And, you know, once a year, communication is wonderful, and we can talk with other deafblind people that are there at camp. And it's such a relief. For a few days, we can have such open communication, and we can enjoy each other and enjoy all of our surroundings. And in the hearing-sighted world, people look at us, deafblind people, and they think that we're broken. They think that we're handicapped. They think of all the things that we don't have. We don't have vision. We don't have hearing. And really, they pity us. But in the deafblind world, we're not broken any longer. We're all the same. The only place that we're broken is in the hearing-sighted world. So when deafblind people come together and socialize, that's the only time that I don't feel broken. So I enjoy my time with other deafblind people. So that's why I enjoy teaching and training interpreters also, because in my classroom, it becomes the deafblind world again for me, and I'm no longer broken. I can control the environment. So that's why it's essential that deafblind people meet other deafblind individuals, because life is hard. Life is very difficult for all people, regardless of whether they're hearing or deaf, sighted or blind. Life is very difficult. It's a struggle. But with deafblind people who share the same struggles, like not being able to drive, not being able to communicate, walking when you can't see signs and you can't read where it is that you're going, all of us have these similar struggles. And when we're together and we're talking, we can share our experiences. We can teach each other how to overcome these struggles. We can tell each other what's successful for us as individuals, and we can discuss our successes and learn different ways. We can help each other. So it's critical to meet other deafblind people.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Izzy. The next question is for Andrea. Andrea, how have you gained support or inspiration from connecting with others who are deafblind, either now or in the past?
Okay, I never really knew any deafblind people when I was growing up, really. Never really knew any until I went to deafblind camp in 2008. And I met Jill and a few others at the camp, including Izzy and Jill. And they inspired me. And I realized a lot of deafblind people can do anything, especially not hear well or see well. And they are my inspiration, and I hope to pass that inspiration to future generation who are deafblind. Thank you.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Andrea. We'll go ahead and pass the microphone down to Jill, and we'll go back to Jill for this next question. Jill, what extracurricular activities, clubs, sports, were you involved in during school, college, and what supports or accommodations did you use?
In high school, I was really big with volleyball, and junior high and high school both. And again, we didn't know I had a vision loss at all until I was in my 20s. But the gym teacher, she recognized that I was good. I'm going to say I was a really good volleyball player. And but she recognized the fact that every once in a while the ball was like, why isn't Jill? So what she ended up doing was she got this really bright lime green volleyball. So every game, practice, they called it Jill's ball because it was bright green. And that's what got me through volleyball. And another thing was I ran track. I love track. And when, you know, I might get set and shoot the gun, I didn't always hear the gun go off. So there was always somebody on my team. I did a 100-yard dash and all that stuff, always bending down, and then they kind of like waved me on, go, now. So I really enjoyed doing that, and I was also gymnastics manager all through junior high and high school. I couldn't do gymnastics, but I was able to help other people, and I really enjoyed that. So, and now I don't play volleyball because I'm too busy doing other stuff, but those are the things that I was doing, and that's how I was accommodated.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Jill. The next question is for Karen. Karen, what extracurricular activities, either clubs, sports, those types of things, were you involved in during school? And then what supports or accommodations did you use?
I was never able to play any type of sports, like ball sports. I couldn't see the ball and it would hit me in the face, so I didn't participate. It would be too dangerous of a situation. But I did find other things that I was good at. For example, swimming. I was a swimmer, and I started when I was 6, and I stopped after college. And I was an athletic swimmer, and I went to the Junior Olympics when I was 13. And I enjoyed that very much. But the wonderful thing about swimming is it's an individual sport. So I was able to compete, and I won many medals because I knew when to dive in, and my coach would tap me, just like Jill said. When the gun went off, someone would tap me, and so I knew it would be time to start. And I could dive into the water and swim, and I would swim as fast as possible, of course, and I couldn't see the other swimmers, but I guess it didn't matter because I won anyway. But anyway. Also, my family enjoyed sailing. So I started to sail, and I learned how to do that. And I became pretty good at that, but I needed someone to help with the navigation. Obviously, I couldn't see where we were going very easily. But I enjoyed it very much. It was very fun. And I used to work as a crew member on a large sailboat when they were racing. And again, I needed help with navigation. But I could work on the rope crew, and I felt the wind in my face, and I was certainly able to figure out the best way to address the wind currents. So another thing I did was I was on the crew team. It was the rowing team in college. and that was a lot of fun. I had to watch. It was the person who told us when it was time to row, so I would keep a close eye on her, and she would sign to me, and at the same time she would use the microphone. So she would say, ready, left, straight, fast. So she would sign, or she would sign slow, and I always understood. Even though she was speaking and signing at the same time, I could understand her and understand her signals. So those were my sports. And then later, when I was an adult, I enjoyed skiing. And now I don't ski any longer because I feel like it might be too dangerous. I can't see the trees or other skiers, and I don't want to kill anyone. But I did hear from a person who's deaf but sighted, and she leads deaf-blind skiers. And she works in the Colorado mountains, so I'm thinking about trying that, and I'm not sure exactly how she would guide deaf-blind people, but I'm certainly willing to try.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Karen. Our next question is for Louis. Louis, what extracurricular activities, clubs, sports were you involved in during school, and what supports or accommodations did you use?
This is Louis speaking. Well, at that time when I was in the oral school, it was very popular to play baseball, but I thought that was boring, so I didn't get involved in that. And when I moved to Puerto Rico, they have baseball and basketball. And again, I think both of those sports are boring, so I never got involved in either one of those. And when I moved here to America, I learned about football. And I thought, I can hit people. You know, if I'm in a bad mood, what a great way to take out my aggressions. I think I might join a football team. So I didn't have a chance to join a football team until I believe it was my freshman year. And I joined the junior varsity football team. And I was not very experienced, and so I didn't get to play much, and that made me kind of crabby. And I would ask the coach if he would put me in, and they wouldn't. And they would say I had to learn more, and I got very crabby about it. And so I decided that it was time for me to quit and transfer to the deaf school. So when I got there, again, the coach was deaf. Everyone could sign. It was wonderful because communication was so accessible. But I still played second string and stood there on the sideline waiting for my turn to get called into the game. They told me that I had to practice speed. So finally I got to play full-time as a starter when I was a senior. And I played both offense and defense. And offense, I made a lot of mistakes because I missed them saying my name because I had the limited vision, and so a lot of things happened that I couldn't see. And so the coach pulled me to play defense, and I loved defense because I got to hit people. Anybody with the ball, I got to tackle them. It was excellent, and I really enjoyed tackling people. It was excellent. But if I could back up just 1 second, not only did I play football, but I also joined the wrestling team. And I was pretty darn good as a wrestler, but it was a hearing school, and they were really, really skilled. And I joined the team late, but when I was a senior, I took third place in a wrestling tournament at the deaf school, so that was great. When I did win the state championship as a team, not individual, but as a team at the hearing school, so that was a wonderful experience for me. So I've been involved in several different sports. I decided I didn't really want to be involved in college sports because the coach always yells at you. So I decided to focus on weightlifting, an individual sport, and I wanted to see how much I could bench press. Or, I wanted to see if I could lift 500 or 600 pounds. So I've been bench pressing and weightlifting for a long time, but I guess that's it.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Louis. The next question is for Izzy. Izzy, what extracurricular activities, clubs, or sports were you involved in during school, and what supports or accommodations did you use?
this is Izzy speaking. When I was growing up, I was banned from gym class. And there's a story that goes with that, but I'm not going to tell you. You know, later in the social, you can ask me what happened, but I was banned from gym class. So, I graduated from high school, and I went to college, and I had a friend who was a skilled bicyclist. And she told me that we could bicycle together, but I told her that my balance wasn't good, so I didn't think I could do it. But she had a bicycle built for two, a tandem bike, so every day I biked with her. And we also jogged together. My leader dog was a really good jogger, so the two of us would run, and we had something that attached to my wrist and her wrist, so that my coach would have this around her wrist and I would have it around my wrist, and my dog would lead. So the three of us would run together every morning. And so I ran and I biked, and I was also a skilled swimmer, like Karen was saying. I could swim like a fish. So I was very active during college. There was also another game for blind people called Goal Ball, G-O-A-L, Goal Ball, and it's almost like soccer, but you play it on the floor. So I played on the Goal Ball team, and they allowed a deafblind person to play. So I played that during college. And then when college was done, let's see, what did I do? It's more like walking and not running. I didn't run as much after college because my dog could run fine, but I needed another sighted person to run with me because of traffic and a variety of other issues, and it just wasn't safe. So most of the time I would walk or do other things. So I love walking and swimming. I do love crafts also. I sew a lot, I knit, I do a variety of crafts. So I think I'm busy enough with everything I do, plus those hobbies.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Izzy. Our next question is for Andrea. Andrea, what extracurricular activities, clubs, or sports were you involved in during school, and what supports or accommodations did you use?
This is Andrea speaking. The club I was in National Honor Society in high school, and also Anti-Substance Abuse Community in high school, which that community was when we would go to other elementary school in the school district and educate younger students about the drug and alcohol, the danger of it, and not to do them. And for the National Honor Society, we just did some projects. I can't remember what they are now, but we did some projects. But in National Honor Society, they usually nominate students who have really good GPA. And that's pretty much the extracurricular activity that I was involved in high school. But in college, I was in, let me see, I try to remember here. Okay, I was a resident hall representative to student council at college when I was at Madonna, and also a hall representative for resident student hall council too. But I'm a student representative to the Student Government Association. I mixed those two up. But that's pretty much the extracurricular activity I did in high school and college, because when I was in high school, I never got involved in sports because my visual problem, because I just can't see a distance. But when I had to take gym class for 2 years, but the teacher was aware of my visual problem. So, but in softball, when we played softball, they would have students come up a little bit closer to pinch the ball to me when I was in gym class. So we played that in junior high and high school. That's pretty much the only accommodation I can think of. And I just did but I did not have any other accommodation when I was in National Honor Society or anti-substance abuse community. But I just felt in the fun when they had meetings. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
This is Jennifer, and our next question will be for Jill. Jill, what has helped you to keep a positive outlook?
This is Jill. I am a very positive person. I mean, I do have struggles and frustrations and all of that, you know, from being deafblind. But to me, and I know this is philosophical, but I only have one life to live. And I don't want to live it sad or depressed. And one of the things is to educate people about deafblindness. That is, I think, the biggest thing, and we need to learn how to advocate for ourselves. And I don't know, I'm just a very positive person, and that's the way I want to live my life. So.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Jill. The next question is for Karen. Karen, what has helped you to keep a positive outlook?
This is Karen speaking. Most of the time, I'm a positive person. I do have my moments where I struggle, but really what helps me is my friends, really good friends, and a really good family too. They're very supportive, and they're very loving. And the number one thing for me to remain positive is a sense of humor. You have to laugh. If you can't laugh, then you're just going to cry or be really crabby all the time. So laughter is important. And like Jill said, life is short. And I typically joke and play and tease and find things to enjoy. I guess if you surround yourself with positive people, you tend to be more positive yourself. Also, I think about, I think about the research, and the research shows that optimism is better for your health. So, for two reasons, it's important. Physically and quality of life, it's important to be very optimistic.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Karen. The next question is for Louis. Louis, what has helped you to keep a positive outlook?
This is Louis. Well, my situation is a little bit different. I know that a lot of people are very pessimistic. They're very negative, and I try to just ignore people that are negative. I talk with really cool friends, or if I'm really frustrated or angry by something, I go to the gym. I exercise it out. It's a great stress relief. Or, I'll get a friend who's experienced in wrestling, and I wrestle it. I wrestle it out. That really helps with stress relief, something physical. It's a way of controlling my anger. It's much better than, getting angry. So weightlifting, that type of thing. But, well, I guess that's pretty much it. I guess if I had advice for you, deafblind people, when you feel very angry, it's very simple. Just ignore negative people. Try to find an even-tempered person. Just ignore the negativity. Who are these people? They're ridiculous. Just don't surround yourself with negative people. Stay positive. Stay optimistic. Enjoy life. It's much better than having these negative people influence you. Always be positive. You're going to feel better, and life will just be better.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Louis. The next question is for Izzy. Izzy, what has helped you to keep a positive outlook?
This is Izzy speaking. Well, Jill and Karen and Louis, the three of them are very right. They're correct. You have to choose positive over negative. And deafblind people do have their daily struggles, and it becomes very frustrating, and this does happen every day. But I have very good friends, so I can just let it all hang out with them. You know, I can vent, and then I'm done with all of the negativity, and I can go on. For me specifically, my biggest help has been my faith. I use a lot of prayer. I use a lot of walking to calm myself down. And I need to change my attitude. I have to do that. From the negative, frustrating things, I have to work to change that to be positive. And it's hard work. It's not easy. You really have to mull things over, and you have to decide to change yourself and to ignore the negativity. You have to make the decision to become optimistic. So I focus on the beautiful things, the good things. I focus on surrounding myself with positive people. You know, and you can vent and you can get angry, of course, but you have to let go of that and be finished with it. Don't dwell on those things, and you have to focus on the positive. So it's internal and external. You have to be positive and enjoy life. So whatever works for you, if it's your faith or whatever it is, use that and practice that daily. Think optimistically.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Izzy. The next question is for Andrea. Andrea, what has helped you to keep a positive outlook?
This is Andrea speaking. Well, the first and foremost thing that I can keep on my positive outlook is my faith in God. And secondly, my family and friends. And thirdly, and I know that tomorrow always looks better than the next day. Tomorrow will be better than the next day. Because things always look better tomorrow. And Izzy and Karen and Louie and Jill, they gave you all great advice. Surround yourself with positive people. Don't worry about negative people because they don't have anything better. So that's why they are so negative. Be positive because it's better for your health and keep you sane. And I hope you all will find many positive friends and family and many people who are supportive. And also you can vent to your friends. That's what I do. I vent to my friends from college, school, online, whatever. And it helps get off your chest. And of course, pray. Thank you.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Andrea. And I think now we may open it up. We'll end this portion for a moment on a positive note and open it up to the audience to take a few audience questions at this point. And if you would just raise your hand, we'll bring the microphone over to you.
I'm Kevin Lopez, and why were you banned from gym class?
This is Izzy speaking. Okay, all right. Now, you remember that I went to a hearing school that was supposed to be mainstream, but it really wasn't a mainstream school. It was two very separate programs. So the deaf-blind students were always kept separate from the hearing-sighted students. We were always by ourselves with our own kind, if you will. So my friend, whose name was Cheryl, the two of us, we were supposed to be more able, the more able students, and the other deaf-blind students in my class, they were fully blind and fully deaf. But Cheryl and I, were supposed to be able to do things. So they thought the two of us could do specific things. And they told us to go to gym class. I had never been to gym class in my life. I didn't even know what that meant. What do you mean, gym class? So Cheryl and I went into gym class, and there was all this movement and all these people moving around and all these kids with different colored balls, and it was awesome. It was a sight to behold. So my friend Cheryl and I, she could hear a little bit. Cheryl could hear a little bit, so she was interpreting for me, and she said that we were supposed to line up facing this other line of students. So the two of us lined up, and we stood there facing this other line of students, and the other students had a ball, and they were throwing it. And I was watching this happen, and the ball was bouncing beside me, and I thought, this looks like great fun. So I picked up that ball and threw it really hard to the other students in the other line, and the kid got hit with it and fell down and started crying. And so the other kids started throwing the ball at me, and I got really mad. And so I picked up that ball. It was huge, and I had an armful of balls, and I started throwing it at all these kids, and they were falling and crying. And the gym teacher said, "Get out! You are banned from class." And I said, well, okay, sorry, because there had been no explanation of the game. I didn't know what was going on, so I left class. And they said, you can't come back to gym class again, Izzy. So the next year, the gym teacher invited Cheryl and I back to the new gym class again. And I was like, well, I'm a little hesitant to go, but the coach was outside playing, and the coach was running, and they said it was time to run. And I said, well, hey, I can run. So Cheryl and I started running together. And I could see some people that were going the other way. And Cheryl and I were going one way, and the other people were going the other way. And we didn't understand what was going on. And remember, there was no explanation. So I saw a ball laying there, and I thought, oh, it's the ball game again. And my friend said, run. So I ran, but I held the ball this time. And I ran, and I ran, and I kept going, and I ran home with the ball. And my mom said, Izzy, what are you doing at home, and why do you have this ball? And I said, well, the gym teacher gave me the ball, and I came home. And she said, Izzy, you're supposed to be in school. And I said, no, Mom, they told me to run, so I ran home. And my mom said, Isabel, are you serious? You have to go back to school and give them that ball back. And I said, no, this is my ball, Mom. And she said, Izzy, take the ball back to school. And I said, oh, good grief. So I had to go back to school, and they said we were playing soccer. I didn't know what soccer was. Nobody had explained to me what the game of soccer was. So once again, I was kicked out of gym class. So the third year, I went back to gym class. Okay, back to school. Now, this is a long time ago. And there was this game called Crack the Whip. It was an old-fashioned game, Crack the Whip. So I was very excited. So all of the kids were lined up, and we all had to lock arms like this. So we all locked arms, and we ran in a big line together. And the first person would run as fast as they could, hanging on to the person behind them, and they were trying to break the line. Well, when you're at the very end of the line, whoo, and if you're the last person, it is fun. You really get whipped around as the last person. I loved being the last person. It was so much fun. So, went into gym class, Cheryl and I. And we thought, wow, this is Crack the Whip. This is wonderful. And Cheryl said, yeah, it's Crack the Whip. So I said, okay. And I said, I want to be last. And Cheryl said, no, I want to be last. So we were fighting about who got to be last and Crack the Whip. So anyway, we lined up, and I could see people doing this motion. And I thought, what the heck's going on? You're not supposed to do that, like bounce like that and crack the whip. But anyway, I was just copying people doing the same motion that they were doing. And then after a while, this boy that was next to me grabbed my arm. And I thought, all right, game on. Here we go. We're going to run. So I took off running as fast as I could, knowing that I was first. But the boy was behind me was crying. And I thought, what the heck is wrong with you, kid? Why are you crying? And he let go. And the teacher said, Izzy, out of class. And I thought, what now? What are you talking about? Well, it was square dancing. It wasn't Crack the Whip. I had no idea. You're not supposed to run with square dancing. He was my partner. I was supposed to be dancing. No one told me anything at all. I had no idea. Cheryl and I, banned from gym class for life. I said, oh, well. Sorry.
This is Beth speaking. That was a great way to kind of start to cap off our day, Izzy. Thank you. Other questions from our audience? Okay.
This is Robin from Mount Pleasant. My son Eric is too embarrassed to ask questions here, but how do you as an adult find resources in the community and seek out things that you need as an adult to get help?
This is Beth speaking. Maybe we could go down the line again and check in with the panelists. The question was, Robin and her son Eric are wondering how you find resources as an adult to get the supports and things that you need. And I thought we could go down the line. Maybe Jill, start with you. We're passing the mic.
I feel now there's a lot more resources out there for deafblind. One of the things, you can go online, aadb.org. That's American Association of Deafblind, and there's a lot of resources on that. And we have the Deafblind organization in Michigan, and that is SHIM=DB. And what it is, it's self-help for independency in Michigan, equalizing the deafblind. And the reason we came up with that name is to make it totally different from MADB. Another thing that we're doing is, it's called the National Task Force on Deafblind Interpreting. Let me tell you, I can go on and on. And it's not just, when we say deafblind interpreting, it's not just signing. And the reason, one of the reasons I'm on the committee is, yes, I do use sign language, but somebody like my brother, he has 2 cochlear implants. He's clueless with sign language. He relies on his cochlear implants. So I'm on the committee to work with more of the cochlear implants, FM systems, that kind of stuff. We also have what's called I Can Connect. And maybe Izzy can talk a little bit about this, but when I was president of AADB, the American Association of the Deafblind, I was honored to be a part of this, but a group of us went to FCC in Washington, D.C., and we were able to get FCC to give $10 million to low-income deafblind, kids included. And you have to be low income, and again, I'll have Izzy explain a little bit more about this. But the pilot program will continue, and hopefully this will be a 5-year. And again, I could go on and on, but I think I'll pass it over to Karen. Maybe she can give some ideas.
This is Karen speaking. Okay, really, I think that there are 3 avenues for adults to find support and resources in the community. The first way, I always say, if you have friends, if you have family, if you have neighbors, whoever, start with them. Start with the people closest to you. These are natural supports. So start with that. But if you find that you really need something more technical or from the deaf-blind community itself, that's fine. That's your second resource. They have more formal resources for you. For example, what Jill was just explaining, SHIM. It's a wonderful organization here in Michigan run by and for deafblind people. So that's a good start. Also, annually, we have a deafblind workshop here in Michigan. It's like a camp. And there's a lot of activities that we do. We have educational workshops. We have a dance. Now, if you can imagine how much fun this is with deafblind people dancing, it's wonderful. It's such a good time. Other states also have deafblind camps or activities. There's deafblind travel. So there are a lot of different resources in other states also. The other thing is if you need something more medically related, resources or vision related, some type of training, then I would suggest involving yourself with BSBP. I think that's the acronym. It used to be Michigan Commission for the Blind, but BSBP. And one of the things they provide is voc rehab. And that's to help with finding work or attending school or finding work later, and also with training. They teach orientation and mobility training, and that's how you work with a cane. And sometimes later, if you could go to Leader Dog or some other type of blind organization to get a guide dog. And a guide dog organization, if they provide in-depth O&M or orientation and mobility training, they might also provide GPS training. And that is wonderful for independent living. That is really an amazing skill to have. Also, the rehab counselor can refer you to in-depth training at their training centers, and that opens many opportunities for people. They can learn Braille, they can learn independent living skills. So those are wonderful resources to have. So those would be my 3 recommendations. One other thing is if the parents or older deafblind people want to contact one of us, I know that Jill and Izzy, and I'm not sure who else from our panel. I can't speak for the other people on our panel, but I know the 3 of us are always very happy to talk with people and to suggest different ideas. So there you go.
This is Beth speaking. I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Louis, do you have resources to add?
I do. As Jill said, and as Karen said, I agree with what they've told you today, but also I have to emphasize again all of the information that is at our fingertips with the computer. You can get anything you need from the computer. And for young people, I would suggest going to the Helen Keller National Center in New York, where they have the deaf-blind program, and it's very enjoyable to meet people who are just like you, so that could be another suggestion. Or Deaf-Blind Central here, Beth Kennedy, has a lot of information about the camp and different camps too, about skiing. So I would say get as much information as you can right here and utilize the internet and enjoy yourselves as deafblind people. There's absolutely nothing stopping you. Do not let anything get in the way of your plans. Go for it. Enjoy yourselves.
This is Beth. Excellent advice. Izzy, would you like to talk about iConnect and other resources?
This is Izzy speaking. The Lions Club is very helpful with families also. A lot of people forget about the Lions Club, but they're very helpful. So you need to remember that. Again, AADB. And another I had forgotten. When I was in college, it's skiing for Ski for Light. Ski for Light. That's sighted people guiding deaf-blind people while skiing. Now, it's not downhill skiing, but it's cross-country skiing. So that's another resource, too, I forgot to tell you about. ICC, I Can Connect. That helps deaf-blind people for communicating on the phone. There's a variety of equipment that you can receive free of charge. The video phone, And this piece of the equipment that I'm using in front of me is a Braille recorder. And it includes a phone, so I can make calls. It used to be that deaf people had TTYs, and they would put the phone on the TTY to make a relay call using the TTY, and they would call an operator. But now we have the relay call for a relay center for deafblind people who can use Braille, and you can use the computer. So there's a variety of different equipment that deafblind people can use. If you qualify for that, it's free of charge. So you can go to iCanConnect, and all of that's spelled out, .org, and find much more information. Oh gosh, I should have brought the brochures to pass out to you, but I forgot. Anyway, iCanConnect.org. You can find that on the internet. And then another person to contact about that is Cindy Caldwell. And she can help with the paperwork too to apply for this program. So once you've filled out the paperwork and we found out that you have qualified, Cindy will contact me, and I can come to your home and sit down with you, and I will do an evaluation, and we can decide what type of equipment you need, and then I will order that equipment for you, and you'll receive the equipment, and then I'll come to your home to train you on how to make phone calls, or how to communicate with hearing people, or exactly how to use the equipment that you've received. And again, it's free. So please take advantage of the program. Okay? If you Google deafblind, you will find just a myriad of different resources that are out there on the computer. And again, most of them are free for families and for deafblind individuals.
Thank you, Izzy. Andrea, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add, except all other panels gave great advice. Yeah, there's a lot of resources out there online. You just Google deafblind, just like someone said. And there's tons of information out there. Thank you.
This is Beth. It is hard to be the last in line when you have to list off resources, because it's hard to come up with one that hasn't been mentioned. Okay, this is Beth speaking. Are there additional audience questions? Okay.
Hello, this is Trevor here. I just have a question for any one of the panelists. In the past, when you career growth, or when you're studying in school or in college, have you come across any situation where you wanted to use a particular accommodation or a particular tool that will help you in your learning process, but the school system or the college system is adamant that they don't have a policy allowing that? So how did you get around that and make that happen for you? Because we are having a similar problem with Sean, because there are some technical lectures that we would like him to take in the class so that he can listen at home and follow what's going on. But the school has a policy of not allowing taping up any lectures. So we're trying to figure out a way how to get around this. So just want to know how you overcome such situations in life. Thank you.
This is Beth. By raising a hand, is there a panelist that would like to speak to that question? Karen, do you want to start with you?
Okay, this is Karen. Unfortunately, I have had that same experience many times. So, unfortunately, I've had to learn that you're correct. I've had to learn to overcome these challenging situations. Oftentimes, people will say, we don't do that, or we can't provide that, or that's against our policy. And you're right, that's happened to me many times. With the school system, you have some ways of addressing that. You can go through their specific channels for up the food chain, if you will. Go up the food chain through the school's specific channels, because sometimes you really have to remind organizations or schools or businesses or whoever it is, remind them of the law. Remind them of the ADA. ADA says that you must provide appropriate accommodations, reasonable accommodations. And if the accommodation that you feel is appropriate and reasonable is the only way that you can have access to the information, then you have to demand that that's what you get. And also, again, you have to be very clear with your documentation. What specific reason is it that you need that accommodation? And really, that's helpful in general. And I think that will help you in your future, too. Like I said in the past, I learned that you had to be very clear and specify exactly what you need and be able to explain why you need it. Sometimes, for me, I make a list. Each thing that I've requested will be on that list, and then a clear explanation of why I need that and how they can accommodate me. So make a list, and unfortunately, this is not the first time you're going to experience these barriers. This will happen repeatedly, but it's helpful each time. Instead of getting frustrated, feel like it's a learning situation and feel like you're going to learn the best way to overcome barriers. So that's my suggestion. Sometimes you have to have a legal advocate. I'm sorry to have to say that. It's unfortunate, but twice in my life I've had to request a civil rights attorney. I wish I hadn't had to do that, but that's what happened.
Thank you, Karen. Louis, you have your hand up. You'd like to respond to that as well?
Yes. Well, I haven't experienced your exact situation, but I can picture what you're going through. I would say contact your regional Helen Keller National Center representative, and that would be Laura Thomas. And you can ask her questions, and she might come to your school and help you make some very specific accommodations. She can explain that deafblind people have rights, and you need to educate exactly what you need. You need to educate the system to exactly what you need. They do not have any right to deny you. They have to respect the ADA. That's all there is to it. So contact Helen Keller National Center. And then if that doesn't work, you can try contacting Cindy Caldwell. She's the deaf-blind unit specialist. And if you're still not satisfied, contact an ADA attorney. And I think that would help you.
Thank you, Louis. Are there other panelists who would like to respond to that question? Izzy.
This is Izzy speaking. I know exactly what you mean. With your son, you're going to have to be an advocate. And if your son needs any, and I do mean any type of accommodation for school, your son has an absolute equal access right to get that accommodation. And I know the school is always worried about money. That's always the bottom line. And they're always going to say no. They're going to say, we don't have the money. That's not our policy. We don't have the money. But you know what? They've got the money, and they'll be spending it in some other place. They just don't want to spend it on your son. So they have that money. And you pay your taxes. You are a taxpayer. So you have given him money. So it's time for you to get that money back for your son's education. So you need to have an IEPC with the school for your son. And all of the people that work with your son should be at the meeting, and they should have an open discussion about your son's needs. All of them will be signing an agreement at this IEP. Have you gone to an IEP meeting in the past?
Trevor's shaking his head yes.
Okay. The other thing is that the school is going to try to play the stall game. You know, they're going to put this off forever. And, you know, and they're going to say, your son's going to graduate and that they don't want to spend that money. So during the IEP, you need to tell them that they have a time limit. So perhaps you could give them a month. And if it still doesn't work, you need to contact BSBP or the Helen Keller National Center. And again, you've given them this time limit of a month. And if they're still not accommodating your son, then you can contact an ADA attorney. And the reason for that is if you allow it to drag on, it's going to drag on. And not only that, but it's going to happen repeatedly. So if you contact an advocate and the school knows that you have this advocate, they're going to be very speedy about getting things done. Do you have more than one son, right? You have two?
Trevor's shaking his head yes.
Okay, yes, okay. So, your first son is going to be the hardest. But your second son, the school is going to know you. And they're not going to play games any longer because precedent will be set. So, they're expecting you to give up. They really are. But if you don't give up, and if you persevere, things will happen. Your son, your children have rights to an equal education. Their basic education will build a foundation for their education in college. And if you just let these problems linger, they may not be ready for college. So I know it's tough, but you're going to have to advocate for your kids. And I feel bad for you, but it's something that you have to do. You have to be a little bit of a rebel. And you have the law that's backing you up. Use it.
Thank you, Izzy. This is Beth speaking. Other panelists would like to respond? This is Beth. Don't hesitate also to contact DB Central because we can assist, and they are right. The Americans with Disabilities Act certainly backs up your situation, but you also have the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the law behind your IEP. So you have a couple of things on your side, and Jennifer and I would be very happy to talk to you some more about that and help you access some of the resources that our panelists have named off. Okay. Do we have other audience questions? You have another one? That's okay.
Well, I'm Kevin Lopez, and I was wondering, can a deaf-blind person pursue a drawing career?
Okay, this is Beth speaking, and I see two panelists' hands have shot right up to answer this question. I think I saw Izzy first.
This is Izzy speaking, and yes, I love you. This is excellent. Do you like to draw?
Yes, I do. I have some drawings right here. He's holding them up.
Okay, wonderful. Another resource for you is called American Printing House. It's American Printing House, and that organization has a drawing competition for blind children. It's nationwide, and it's a beautiful program, and some of the children that participate and compete are fully blind because, again, there's computer-aided braille drawing, and they can print pictures from that. Also, they have something called Draw, and you have something that's like an iPad, and you have a stylus to draw with, and that's linked to the computer. And so your picture will come up on the computer. You'll have a graphic, and you can print it in braille or print it as a picture, either way. So all of the kids compete. It's K through 12, so that might be something you're interested in.
Two good ideas. Okay, Karen, do you want to respond?
This is Karen speaking. Another thing related to art in general is that drawing is wonderful. And like Izzy said, there are many ways to access drawing, but also another kind of art is sculpture and clay. You can make bowls, you can make statues, whatever it is that you want to make. Also, you can fold paper. I don't know if you've ever heard of origami.
Kevin is
But-
shaking his head yes.
It's paper folding. It's a Japanese art. So there are a variety of things involved with touch, things that you can feel in the art field. There's a man that lives here in Michigan, and he works with wood. And he makes very awesome toys. They're so cool. And he is fully deaf and fully blind, but he is an expert. He's a very skilled artist and woodworker. So there are a variety of arts that you can use forever, regardless of whether you're deaf or deaf-blind.
Thank you. Are there other panelists who would like to answer Kevin's question?
Hi, this is Cheryl speaking. This is a question for my son Michael, because I know he won't ask. We struggle with trying to get him to be independent on his own, like in a situation such as this, because he does have some vision. He doesn't like to use his cane, but I see many of you are using your canes, and I'm hoping that maybe there's something that you can give him as advice on being independent in situations that he's unfamiliar with.
This is Beth speaking. I would guess that almost all of our panelists have something to say on this. So why don't we start at Jill and wake our way down like we have been all day today.
The one thing that I learned with the cane is, when I first started using the cane, it was embarrassing. I didn't want to be identified as a blind person. But then I realized, wait a minute, that's not how people were identifying me. They were identifying me as Jill, who can't see and hear. So I think the biggest thing is that embarrassment of the cane, but it's not, because it's for our safety and it's for everybody else's safety. I do use a cane, but I also have Asher. This is my second guide dog. And there's times that I may leave Asher home, and that cane is my independence. I can't get around without that cane. But once I got a guide dog, it was like, okay, this is a different means of independence. And Leader Dog School for the Blind in Rochester is just now starting, and I haven't heard any more, about you had to be 18 out of high school in order to get a leader dog. But now they're starting to work with deaf, blind, and blind, visually impaired in high school. So again, I haven't heard how that's gone, but that's a program they just started. So that might even be something that you could consider.
This is Beth speaking. I'd like to add that in order to be eligible for a guide dog, I believe that you have to demonstrate good cane and orientation mobility skills. So if a dog is something that's interesting to Michael or to any of the other people in the audience, that's something that would maybe be a motivator. You have to do this in order to be eligible for your dog. Karen, would you like to add something?
This is Karen. Yes, I would. What Jill recently mentioned about a guide dog and the Leader Dog Association, that association currently offers orientation and mobility training for youth. And it's not related to having a dog at all. It's use of your cane and sometimes GPS. But the point is that it's all young people that have a visual impairment. It's like going to camp. And it's fun. And I think it's free. I think. But anyway, it's right here in Michigan. So it would be worth discussing that with Beth Kennedy and Leader Dog. and just to see, what's available. Because with my experience with young people, if their peers don't think that it's stupid, then, they're going to think it's cool to have this good skill. We can preach forever, and tell people that it's not dumb and whatever, but kids tend to listen to their peers more often than they listen to their parents. So it's great to have them all together in a group.
Thank you, Karen. Louis, I missed, did you have your hand up to respond to this question?
I did. This is Louis speaking. Remember I told you briefly about what happened and about me being fiercely independent and not using a cane. And then when I finally accepted myself as a deafblind person, I noticed that I was running into people, like at the mall, at the bar at night, and that led to fights. That people thought I was pushing them, and I'm not the kind of person that's going to push anybody. I'm a nice guy. I'm the nicest person you're ever going to meet. But I realized that I really needed to use a cane so that I could be identified as somebody that was blind, and then I would say, hey, I didn't run into you, you ran into me, and people would move and let me go through different spots. So I was in New York City and I was practicing this orientation and mobility skill. We wanted to walk in downtown, and it was in the, where was it? It was in Penn Station. And there are a bazillion people there trying to use the subway. And, you can't even see their faces. You don't even know who's running into you. And they do, and they don't even care that they've run into you. So they gave me a cane, and boy, people just parted like the Red Sea. They just moved aside. They didn't push me. They didn't run into me. And I was like, oh, wow. I was so thankful. And I could just stroll down the street. And I didn't care if people looked at me or felt sorry. Who cared? I have a right to walk any place I want to. And I could be independent with the cane. That cane is my best friend in the world. It's wonderful to have. So I'm thrilled with it. And you know what? I'm proud of who I am. I'm independent, fiercely independent, and I take that cane with me every place I go. I absolutely have to. And, I don't think I can leave this at home and walk by myself. I'll trip and fall and hurt myself, and you will too. It's not worth it. Bring your cane with you all the time, anytime you leave the house. Who cares if people look at you? It doesn't matter. Got that cane with you every day, you're going to be independent. Use it. I'm encouraging you to use it and not be embarrassed. Be proud of who you are. Be proud of being deafblind.
Thank you, Louis. Izzy, something to add?
This is Izzy speaking. Yes. Oh, I was stubborn when I was growing up. I said I was independent and I didn't need a cane. And my teacher, who was my 2nd grade through 5th grade teacher, remember I had the same teacher, yelled at me all the time because I refused to use the cane. I said, oh, I'm fine without it. My mom taught me how to walk. I don't need to have a cane. Because, I told you about the barefoot story where I could walk on the grass and then move to the cement and know where I was. But going downstairs, lots of times, I would, pass out, or I broke my leg twice. So I decided that I better learn how to use this cane, and I had to accept it. And then finally, I understood. Using the cane was for my safety, but it was also, like Louis said, for identification of who I am. So if I ran into a person, it wasn't because I was trying to be mean to them. It was because I couldn't see. The other reason, too, well, I was walking through a parking lot, and I couldn't see anything, and of course I couldn't hear anything, and a car backed into me, hit me, and knocked me down. So the man got out of the car, and he was really mad at me, and he was yelling at me, and he looked so angry. And he said, "Are you blind, lady?" And I said, yeah, I am. But at the time, I didn't have my cane with me, so I wasn't identifying myself. So when I use the cane, then I have the law on my side. Without the cane, I don't have any proof that I can't see. So that man that ran into me, that backed right into me, they couldn't do anything about that. So I learned a very valuable lesson that day. It's not only for me and my safety, but for other people as well, so they can identify me as a person that can't see, and they can take caution. And like Lewis said, people just part like the Red Sea. It's incredible. It's a big help. And it was hard for me to accept, and I understand that, because I thought that the cane meant that I was weak. But that's not true. Using a cane gives you power, and it gives you an identity. And people will leave you alone.
Great. Thank you, Izzy. Andrea, would you like to add?
This is Andrea speaking. I can relate to students who are younger and feel like they want to fit in. They feel like they worry about using a cane, and people would look at them with pity and something like that. And I understand how that feels, because I feel the same way, because I don't always use my cane like I should have. And today I've got mine. But I should be using my cane. No. But I don't always use it like I should have. Because I understand how others feel the same way. And I realize I'm not alone in feeling that way about using the cane. But I'm going to try to use my cane more often. Thank you. Thank you.
This is Beth. Thank you, Andrea. All right, other questions?
This is Trevor once again, father to Sean and Kevin Lopez. One of the things that keep me up late night is, I have 2 kids. They are hardworking, and I can get them through college. But I'm worried about their first interview, or their first employment, or the first, how that will work out. And I would like to ask any one of the panelists how that first interview or the first work experience was to them, and how did their employers react when they came to know about this disability or stuff like that. And how was that first experience? I just want to know more about it from if you can share any of your experiences, that would be great. Thank you.
This is Beth speaking. Maybe we can go down the panel again, and you can talk about what that was like on your first interview, whether it be for college or work interview.
This is Jill speaking. My first interview after college was at Sparrow Hospital in Lansing. And sat down, and her name was Nancy. She was my boss, and I told her that I was deaf. But I was a nurse. I graduated, and I wanted to work oncology. And she said, not a problem. What can we do to try to solve this solution? I couldn't hear on the phone. So it's kind of one of those, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. So what I did with my first, I would direct and straight. And again, at that time, I didn't know I had ushers. But I knew that something was happening with my vision. So all drugged, I had double checked, and that was the thing that I worked out with my boss. And I worked there for 10 years. I ended up working at Sparrow for 10 years. And the only reason I stepped out of the hospital was because my vision started going, and it was the safety of the patients and myself. And that's where I met my husband, too. So.
Thank you, Jill. Karen, would you like to speak to this?
This is Karen speaking. My first job really didn't involve much communication. So, it really wasn't a big issue for me. I worked as a cook. And I worked as a house painter. So, I didn't really need to communicate with anyone. But, after I decided that I wanted a professional job, I went to school, etc., etc. I started with the internship, and that really helped build bridges for me, because the boss wasn't paying me for working, but the boss could see that I was a very hard worker. The boss could see that I was organized and had focus. So that was the first experience I had. And the boss hired me automatically right after my internship. So that was very helpful. But later, when I was interviewing for a job, honestly, I tried to find jobs that involved direct communication with deaf or deafblind people because it was much easier access. But your sons, I think both of them speak and have cochlear implants. Is that correct?
This is Beth. Parents are shaking their head.
Okay, all right. So to be perfectly frank, that's going to help because that will give them direct communication accessibility. But both sons will also need to be able to describe the limitations of whatever their limitations are. I don't know what that's going to mean for them, but they'll be able to have to be able to describe them. That's important. Also, for your two sons to be able to describe their vision limitations, if they have them, and what type of accommodation they'll need for that. And I don't know what professions they want, but it will certainly depend on what they want. But I think an internship is an excellent way to start a career because there's no risk for the employer. They're not going to lose money, and potentially they might have an opportunity to hire a wonderful worker.
Thank you, Karen. Louis, would you like to tell us about your first interview?
Sure. This is Louis speaking. I think my attitude, first of all, this was before I recognized that I was deafblind. I was deaf. So I interviewed for many different jobs. And I would fill out the applications and turn those in. And I would wait for a call. And I would, that was when I had the TTY, and I would see the caller ID, but no one would ever leave a message. And so I would call back and, try to set up an interview for an appointment and an appointment for an interview. And sometimes I would ask for an interpreter, and sometimes it would be provided, and sometimes it wouldn't be. So when I arrived at the interview, I knew that they would want someone with sight. So I refused to tell them that I was blind. I kept that very private. I just absolutely refused to tell them that I was blind. I wanted them to see me as a deaf person only and see whether or not they would hire me. And occasionally I was successful. So after I accepted the fact, I'm sorry, let me back up a little bit. I forgot to add something. Remember I told you that I could drive at the time and I had a license, and I did so for 20 years. After I accepted that I was deafblind and I decided to let my license go for safety reasons, for my safety, for my wife's safety, for my 3 children's safety, I decided it was best if I stopped driving. And I turned in my license for a state ID. And what it says on that state ID is legally blind. So that right away lets everyone know that I'm legally blind. I hadn't had an experience as a deafblind person. I know that I will have an interview as a deafblind person next week on Tuesday, and that will be the first experience. So it will be very new for me in telling someone that I'm deafblind, and I'll be bringing my cane with me. I hope that the person can see me as a talented employee that's physically able, and I can do anything except that darn quality inspection. But I can do whatever it is they need me to do, whatever they have, whatever they offer. So we'll see. And this, again, it'll be my first experience as a deafblind person, and I'll let them know that I'm deaf and I have a problem with my vision, and I'll just go from there. I can't tell you right now what my first interview as a deafblind person will be like because it's not going to happen until next week.
Great. Thank you, Louis. Izzy, would you like to tell us about your interview?
This is Izzy speaking. Well, for me, it was very similar to Karen because I went through an internship. in college. And that employer knew me and knew that I was a good worker. Unfortunately, your children will have to sell themselves. They'll have to market themselves as really good workers, and they will have to attend work faithfully and, of course, pay attention on the job as professionals, because people do not understand deafblind people. They look at us with pity, and they'll think what a hard life we have and that we can't communicate, and we know that's not true. So your children know that they have self-confidence. They know that they're good workers. They will have to faithfully attend work daily, and I think that they'll be able to get good jobs. If they go to college through an internship, I think that they'll be able to find jobs. But if your children decide that they don't want to go to college, you can always contact BSBP and tell them that your children are looking for jobs, or your children can call and that they tell them that they want some vocational training, and you can get in the door that way. And BSBP will certainly support your children in finding employment, or something that matches their personality, their aptitude, their abilities, because I don't know what your children want to become. Maybe, like Jill said, maybe somebody wants to become a nurse or a doctor or something else. So I know in the past, I believe it was in the 1970s, there was a deaf-blind man. Now, he didn't look blind. It was obvious that he was deaf, but people couldn't tell that he was blind. And he went through med school. And very recently, before he graduated, just right before he graduated, they found out that he was blind. So he could not graduate with a medical degree. He got an attorney, and they debated this. They went to court and finally decided that he was fine and that he could become a psychiatrist. But he couldn't become a medical doctor because of his vision loss. He had Usher syndrome. So he was not granted the license. But the court did work with him, and he was able to become a doctor, a psychiatrist. So it really depends on your children's aspirations. They can become whatever they want. Again, they have to have a support system before they start trying, and then just proceed from there. And I think that they can do it.
Great, Izzy, thank you. And Andrea, how about an interview on your experience?
This is Andrea speaking. Well, my actual first job interview was back in the early 90s when before I started college. I had interview at a public library, being a book shelby book, and I was able to get the job, and I was able to do most of the job, except that I could not hear them paging me to get a book from a closed desk. So they had to come and get me to tell me there's someone who's looking for the book. But people always come up to me and ask me where certain books are, but I usually had no problem. Well, back in those days, it would be before I had glaucoma, and I had visual power from Rubella, and I did not have any trouble reading the call number on the book. So I used to show books and straighten up the magazine and did all sorts of stuff in the library. But compared to the second job interview in the early 2000s, they need someone to do the book shelving or working at the desk. But I never got the job because I told them that I cannot hear very well on the phone, and I went and other stuff. But I never got the job. Someone else did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. And Jill, it looks like Jill wants to add something to that.
Yeah, this is Jill speaking. One thing I did want to add, when I did become a nurse, I had to face reality. There's no way I could have done the emergency room. There's no way I could have done surgery. So I had to really focus on what kind of nursing could I do. So I had to really focus on that. So that's why I became an oncology nurse.
Okay, looks like Karen's going to add also.
This is Karen speaking. One thing that I think is very important, and I can see because you're here, that means you want to encourage your children, and that's wonderful. I think that sometimes people think that people with disabilities can't do anything except something very menial, something simple. And that's not true. It's like hearing sighted people. We can do whatever we want to do. And Jill's right. Sometimes you have to figure out the best specific way to do whatever it is you need to do, but you still can do it, whatever it is you want to do. And I think it's very important for us to tell our kids that they can succeed. And they can succeed in a variety of different places. And success is very different from person to person. I think it's important for people not to limit their children.
Okay, thank you. Are there other panelists who want to add? All right. Do we have any other audience questions? Okay. There was one. My son is here. He wanted to ask Louis. We heard about your goal for weightlifting and what you'd like to bench press, but he wants to know what you currently can bench press.
This is Louis speaking. Well, now I'm a little bit out of shape. But about 4 years ago, I could bench press over 400 pounds. Over 400 pounds. And I could squat over 400 pounds too. And deadlift over 500 pounds. Right now, I'd say I could probably bench press maybe 300.
This is Beth. I'm impressed. Even with the paltry 300 that you can do now. But my son's face looked pretty darn impressed. So, all right. What I would like to do... Oh, one more question. All right, great.
This question's from Eric again. Izzy had spoke about playing go-ball, and Eric was curious how a deafblind person plays a go-ball, considering the ball has bells in it for blind people to hear it when it's coming across the floor.
This is Izzy speaking. There were only 2 of us that were deaf-blind on that team, and the other team was blind. So we worked together, and that ball, when it touched me, I knew I was responsible for the ball. But if it went past me, then a blind person would block it. So we worked together as a team. But they did allow deaf-blind people to be on the team also. And I was a strong player.
All right, this is Beth. Thank you. Any other questions pop into mind here at the end? All right. We're a little ahead of schedule despite starting behind schedule. And I'm very excited to open up the opportunity for people to just casually socialize and meet the panelists and talk to the people who are providing supports today to learn more about those if you think they'd help now or in the future. But before we go and eat the yummy snacks that are next door, we have Rice Krispie treats and delicious garlic parmesan homemade potato chips and different drinks and things. So, but before we do that, I would like to wholeheartedly thank each of the panelists for being so open and honest about your experiences and about shedding such positive light on what is possible for teens who are deaf-blind with a little bit of ingenuity and the right supports. Anything is possible. I've heard that again and again today. So thank you very, very much to our panelists. I'd like to thank our moderator because she helped the day run very smoothly, asking the questions. I would also like to note that without the 15 people providing various supports here today, this day would not be possible. So thank each and every one of you. And our tech people and our video person. It took a village to make today happen, and I think we can all agree that it was extraordinarily successful. And there's a lot of information that was gained by our on-site participants as well as people who will watch this video footage into the future. I think you will impact a lot of people's lives for the